This paper explores feline welfare in Saudi Arabia through a lens of cat abandonment. While many felines in Saudi Arabia are in human homes, a great number of cats live in the streets, often with a compromised quality of life. Abandoned cats are part of the street-living cat community. As a rescuer in Saudi Arabia for over 17 years, I was and still am acutely aware of the normalisation of cats being abandoned in the streets, where very visible suffering occurs. My activist advocate research attempts to discover the reasons people give for abandonment, with the aim of presenting my findings and how to mitigate the phenomenon to an influential authority that both wants to and is able to drive change towards the improvement of street-living cat welfare in Saudi Arabia. As I actively seek a post-human approach towards my research and to avoid presenting human-centred solutions which prioritise human needs over those of cats, I felt compelled to show the difficulties cats face living on the streets of Saudi Arabia. Problematising cat populations is often framed in anthropocentric terms, such as in costs to economic, social and human health, where cats are considered to be pests, trash and nuisances. Research is often discussed in the form of numbers of cats as homogeneous collectives that pose problems for humans, without consideration of the lived lives of cats themselves. Furthermore, while more than human animal abandonment is another global issue, research often addresses why humans abandon or relinquish their cats, failing to research the effect of relinquishment on the cat stakeholders. This study took place in 2019 for my master's degree in anthrozoology, and since then I have come to understand more about the limitations of my methodologies and knowledge base I employed at the time. Two major limitations I've reflected upon have been that I had not discussed how I could possibly incorporate the perspective of cats themselves. All perspectives of cats in this study are through a human lens. This was in part due to ethical boundaries imposed upon my study, but also on my limited awareness of potential methodological processes. However, I am now considering such processes for future studies. Trigger warning. The next slide has photos of rescue cats, nothing graphic but cats in recovery. Please look away now if you don't want to see the images. Cat lovers in Saudi often speak of the profound historical connection between cats and Saudi society, tracing connections back to a story about the Prophet Muhammad, who chose to cut off his sleeve rather than disturb a cat who had chosen to rest upon the clothing. However, in contemporary times, cats' lives are commonly marginalised within communities, freely traded as commodities, and often discarded onto the street once no longer wanted. Once abandoned, many can be observed daily, suffering visibly negative experiences. Monitoring the welfare of cats on the streets occurs voluntarily, but unsystematically, by groups or by individuals who are interested in cat welfare. Cats are ubiquitous in the kingdom, found on every street corner. Research participants are part of a nexus of more than human animal rescuers in the country who attempt, within the constraints of Saudi Arabian law and culture, to engage in a form of animal activism. The trigger warning is over, so please feel free to look at the slides again. In designing and conducting the project, two difficulties became apparent. First, cats are unable to apprise us of their biographies and as to whether they were in fact abandoned. Although a large number of cats are reported in need of help every day on social media platforms, a human lens is applied when judging whether or not a cat is in fact abandoned. Secondly, while not discussed in this presentation, my research shows it is not easy to categorise Saudi street cats' origins. Although there may be clues such as collars, demeanour or breed type in categorising cats, this is not an infallible method of identifying abandonment. Therefore, within this research, the parameters for recognising a cat that has been abandoned, lost or born on the street or any other category are indistinct, and so it is impossible to discuss only abandoned cats as an exclusive category. Subsequently, all cats within this research come under the umbrella term street-living cats. For those interested, I discussed the difficulties of categorisation in a previous presentation, which can be found on my website. The qualitative data used in this research included 2 semi-structured face-to-face interviews conducted with veterinarians who were involved in cat rescue at the time, a year's data from rescue groups' social media posts from Instagram and Facebook, and online questionnaires which were distributed to other known rescue groups and or individuals. All gathered data concerned cat rescue within the kingdom only. My own autoethnographic and researcher voice interjects throughout the research to add self-reflection and my own experiences as a long-term cat rescuer within the country. Social media comprises a culture and law-abiding platform for oculus-centric network surveillance cat witnessing that also allows people to suggest improvements in cat welfare and to interact online to help cats in need. KSA has no official statistics or systematic studies on companion animal abandonment, but there is a proliferation of social media posts which report abandonment and other animal welfare issues all over KSA. Social media is prevalent in KSA, with nearly 91% of the total population of over 34 million people being active internet users and over 75% being active social media users. The figures presented in this report represent the relationships between research participants and their perceptions of how cats fare in the street environment. The perceived magnitude of these issues is given via the number of times the issues are mentioned by interviewees, questionnaire participants, and social media posts. None of the effects are described in medical terms, but as presented by the participants and social media content. The research has two focus points. First, the focus of this presentation frames the effects upon cats through the 5 animal welfare needs. And secondly, on the reasons given for this relinquishment, which are not part of this presentation, but again, a link to this work can be found on my website. The 5 freedoms paradigm, inspired by the 1965 Bramble Report, was originally formulated to address the needs of farmed animals. Meller subsequently suggested adapting the 5 freedoms to 5 animal welfare needs and 5 domains applicable to all domestic animals. While recognising there is a discussion regarding whether feline silvestrus catus is a truly domestic more than human animal, as Palmer highlights, although generally applied to captive animal husbandry, domestication changes animals' natures, making many of them dependent upon human beings. And it can therefore be argued that humans have a moral responsibility to ensure cat welfare standards. Hence, the 5 animal welfare needs provide a useful framework within which to understand the basic welfare requirements of street-living cats, and for the purposes of this study, this paradigm is applied. While these needs can be seen to only give basic freedom from negative states and the ability to survive, recent updates suggest the inclusion of promotion of positive experiences and states give the ability to thrive. However, while I have future plans for suggesting how street-living cats can thrive, for now, I only apply the 5 animal welfare needs, which are comprised of the need for a suitable environment, a suitable diet, to be able to exhibit normal behaviour patterns, to be housed with or apart from other animals, and to be protected from pain, suffering, injury, and disease. The ability of cats to cope on the street, according to Jaros, depends on whether the cat is used to a street cat culture or a highly human-dependent humano-cat culture. Considering Uxell's concept of Umwelt, an organism's subjective experience of its surrounding world, Tonneson argued that this presupposed a stable environment and suggested that any life-changing events to an individual, population, or species would also lead to a change in Umwelt. Tonneson called this an Umwelt transition. Each individual cat that is moved from the relative safety of a climate-controlled, resource-rich home to the environment of the street must also face an Umwelt transition. Another aspect of Umwelt transition cats experience in Saudi Arabia is that cats may experience the abandonment cycle over and over, as the concept of keeping a cat long-term is not an established concept within the country. The first need is the need for a suitable environment. Understanding the climatic conditions of the country are essential in order to frame where the cats are able to survive geographically. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is 95% desert. Arable and forested areas cover under 1% of total land area. No part of the desert and few urban spaces offer sanctuary from extreme temperatures. Due to the extreme desert conditions, domestic cats in Saudi Arabia cannot live entirely separately from people. Mean temperatures were shown to be in the high 30s from 1961 to 1990. However, the rate of temperature increase in the Middle East is greater than the global average. Temperatures exceeded 52 degrees C in Jeddah in 2010, and during my time there, summer temperatures were over 45 degrees C in Tabuk, Dammam and Jeddah, and over 50 degrees C in Riyadh. Excessive heat means cats experience environmental stress and hypothermia, and research participants reported finding cats panting, in heat stress, unable to cope with the hot climate. Saudi cities also experience freezing winter temperatures, with snow falling almost annually in the north. Additionally, urban and desert communities face annual seasonal flooding. The second need is the need for a suitable diet to provide freedom from thirst, hunger, and malnutrition. The figures shown represent the research results on perceptions of cats' abilities to locate adequate nutrition. Sources of food for cats on the street present a challenge. Desert surrounds all urban spaces, and cats depend on human waste for food. Some are able to catch rats and pigeons, or even scorpions and camel spiders. However, most cats are seen scavenging food from garbage skips or food waste left on the streets. However, as research interviewees pointed out, food obtained from garbage does not provide adequate nutrition. Cats are described as thin, starving, emaciated, and skeletal. In addition to starvation and malnutrition, cats do not find water easily, which can lead to dehydration and thence to renal failure, heart disease, and ultimately death. The third need is the need to be able to exhibit normal behaviour patterns by ensuring conditions and treatment which avoid mental suffering. Street hazards contribute in part to fear and distress and were testified to in this research, as abuse, killing, climate, as already discussed, attacks by other cats, being trapped, and car accidents. Interapanish et al. Describe how injuries from motor vehicle accidents are difficult to distinguish from non-accidental injuries, and they emphasise the importance of attempting to differentiate causes of trauma to aid the advancement of animal welfare. Participant witnesses describe cats being subjected to deliberate physical abuse, such as being hit, stoned, kicked, shot, hanged, burnt, and having juice and paint poured on their bodies. The poisoning of street-living animals is banned within the country of Saudi Arabia. Nevertheless, during the time of the research, killing occurred in the streets through mass poisoning. Research participants reported some discrepancies as to who authorises the mass poisoning of animals. In addition to poisoning, cats are reported to have been trapped or disposed of in the desert, sometimes still in traps, by the Baladia, a municipal authority. Any cat in the targeted trapping area, whether a pet with outdoor access, abandoned, lost, or resides there, is in danger of being taken without discrimination. The fourth need is the need to be housed with or apart from other animals. Research participants report that cats are rarely seen as long-term household members and so are vulnerable to multiple unvelt transitions through abandonments. In each unvelt, cats may have had important bonds, attachments, and relationships that were integral to the cat's sense of well-being and understanding of its unvelt. Beckhoff reports that broken bonds can cause distress, and separation anxiety has been identified in cats when separated from an attachment figure, and attachment figures may include a range of species in multi-species households. While cats may be resilient in recovering from physical injuries, recovery from emotional trauma and mental suffering can last beyond physical symptoms. Cats that are placed onto urban streets are not part of established cat colonies. Participants report cats fighting, being attacked by other cats. Abandoned cats must navigate a cat-cat culture, likely very different from any previous understanding they had based on their humano-cat culture. Furthermore, it is not only human-cat relationship bonds that may be broken, but also their bonds with any cats in their prior to abandonment location. Please be aware there's a trigger warning for the images on the next slide. The fifth need is the need for protection from pain, suffering, injury, and disease. The data revealed 1,620 injuries witnessed. Head injuries were the most frequently reported, 243 of which were reported as eye injuries, 305 as broken bodies, including 76 paralysed cats, 91 instances in which body parts were described as destroyed, 86 reports of lost body parts, followed by leg injuries, including 63 paw injuries and 36 radial nerve injuries, skin injuries, including burns and degloved body parts, tail injuries, mouth injuries, broken bones, and neck injuries. Please be aware there's a trigger warning for the images on the next slide. Disease is common in unvaccinated cats. Starvation and malnutrition are not only caused by food scarcity or malnourishment from inappropriate food sources, but also due to an inability to eat. Domestic cats are host to several viruses, and participant reports that viruses are rife, and cats are often advertised on social media as needing help with very severe symptoms. Interviewees reported feline herpes virus, feline calcivirus, and feline parvovirus as common viruses, which are efficiently transmitted diseases. Infected eyes were reported, ranging from mild conjunctivitis and ocular discharge to bulging eyes leading to blindness. These diseases can also cause upper respiratory tract infections, nasal discharges, and painful mouth ulcers. Blindness, mouth ulcers, and breathing difficulties are all life-threatening. Feline panleukopenia also causes severe hemorrhagic gastroenteritis, often leading to dehydration and death. Most of the cats on the street and many in homes are unvaccinated and so all exposed to the viruses. Even cats not facing injury, hazards and disease do not appear to do well. Research data shows they suffer from parasites, ear mites, fleas, and long-haired cats are frequently described as matted and dirty. The trigger warning is now over. This figure reveals a multitude of conditions which contribute towards street-living cats' mental suffering. They include cats being described as dirty, matted, or unable to cope with long hair, tired, motionless, collapsed, comatose, exhausted, lethargic, weak, and crawling. This figure also shows a further range of conditions that cause mental suffering. Of those not already mentioned, almost 90 were reported as dead, 50 as dying, and 76 as suffering. As previously discussed, it is not empirically possible to identify whether a given cat was abandoned, lost, or born on the street. However, it is likely that cats that appear healthy but confused, clueless, and seemingly helpless could be assumed to be abandoned or lost, and is currently undergoing the adjustment process of an unvelt transition. Mental suffering is often demonstrated through emotions. Although defining emotion is notoriously problematic, emotions are generally elicited by stimulus events. Street hazards, injuries, poor conditions, lack of resources, and an unsuitable environment all contribute to stimulus events. Emotional responses can vary in intensity and are subjective for each individual cat, depending on the stimulus event and prior subjective experience. Cats reported demonstrating emotions concordant with mental and physical suffering. Cats advertised on social media as needing rescue are described as showing fear, being scared and afraid. A few are described as friendly, and this appears to concern social media participants who perceive that the cat's friendly nature leaves them open to human abuse. Participants reported seeing anxiety-related symptoms such as depression, anxiousness, refusal to eat, and introversion. Emotional stimuli such as road traffic, unfriendly people, hunger, thirst, and fear are likely to cause greater stress for cats in an unvelt transition. So to give a very brief summary, the research findings suggest that a notable number of street-living cats do not receive the 5 animal welfare needs, a minimum standard for domestic animal welfare. While the data presented today is a very brief overview and is recognised as having its limitations, it is shared hopefully to create a catalyst for further study. Indeed, my own aims are to continue with the work and trying to reach those that have the power to create a paradigm shift in the welfare of street-living animals in Saudi Arabia. Thank you.